My name is Jim Mclernon, and this is my art forum. I thought by doing a short video with drawn ideas, it would help to convey the who, what, and most importantly, why of my art. Recently, I've been researching the elusive why of my current art practice. What I have come up with is no simple explanation. The creatures that I make find a home inside me, but other than that, their existence and need to exist has been until now not fully explored. My research question is buried deep under many layers of thought. To obtain it, rather than being straightforward, it again has many different winding paths. It is fractured and stuck together with many life experiences and artistic influences. Over the next few minutes, what will be brought up will not take you on a straight path. Instead, I'll be throwing many fractured parts of my life that I believe, when roughly put together, make up the why of my art practice. What may seem nonsensical and trivial are the ingredients that make me. I'm going to start with some life experiences. One of my earlier memories of New Jersey was terrifying. I truly believed that while having a deep fear in both clowns and the Tooth Fairy, my real enemy in life were the little gray men. I never saw them, but I would hear them constantly. They would scurry around my floor at night and scratch at the boxes and run through the walls. In my mind, they were these tiny, grotesque men with hooded cloaks and gray faces, and if I didn't notice them, they wouldn't notice me either. One morning, I heard the scratches and got my sister to sit in my room with me and listen. We waited for a while, and then in the end, that's when we found out that we just had mice. I come from a very Roman Catholic family. I can't remember a weekend I didn't have to go to church with them. My favorite pastime would be to study the faces of the nameless familiars around me. Over my years growing up, I would watch the elderly grow older and frailer. When they went to receive the Eucharist, I would get to see their profiles. I fell in love with all the shapes and angles. It was a procession line of character studies for me. They each had different names in my head, and I would check them off as they passed. I like to think I have always had tenets for my personal philosophy. When we had to read Aldous Huxley's Brave New World in school, we had to write a paper for what class system we would be in. The novel takes place in the future, where people are genetically modified to fit a certain place in society. They range from alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and epsilon. With confusion from a class full of alphas, I chose the idea of being a delta. I did this because they were the only ones that seemed happy, and they had no troubles in the world. I've always had the idea that the happiest people are the humble. Not dim or slow, but the ones that have a deep understanding with the world around them. They have a balance with everything, and it's something that I strive for. One of my fascinations is the paranormal. It is the unexplained, and I have an addiction with people trying to give their theories and explanations. One of my favorite childhood pastimes was watching a TV psychic named Sylvia Browne, who would go on daytime talk shows and tell the audience what their past lives were, and that they'd find new love soon, or get a new job. She would talk about the idea of the power of the human mind, and how creatures like the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot were real, and got that way because many people believed in them, causing their ideas to take substance. She said that they were a group of people out there that spent their time conjuring up fake people that would then, over time, become real. In my past research, I explain about the idea of the fourth world and how these were tribes people untouched by the outside. The specific tribe from Papua New Guinea was convinced the first interaction they had with a white explorer was a ghost or a forest spirit. This idea of belief in the mystic greatly interests me. When I worked in retail, I worked with a man from the Philippines who said forest spirits used to visit him when he was growing up in the jungle, and a woman from the Caribbean who had an intense fear of black magic. She would tell me that on our island, if you kept an egg under your arm for 2 weeks without it cracking, it would hatch into a duende, or little evil man gnome, who would then do your bidding. After a recent tutorial, I've started looking into the grotesque as a form of expression. In Philip Thomas's book, The Grotesque, he says it is the approximate expression of the problematic nature of existence. It is when our world ceases to be reliable. He goes on to say that the grotesque is the estranged world filled with ominous tension. He says this disharmony has to not only be in the work of art, but also in the reaction of the viewer and the creative temperament and psychological makeup of the artist. In a book called Modern Art and the Grotesque, it is defined as something that challenges the presumed universals of classical beauty. I would like to go one step further and have it challenge classical normality as well. In Francisco Goya's etchings and paintings, he used some grotesque characters to tell his story. They are the broken toys in his box that play a purpose either in mythology or in a social allegory. This is also seen in one of my favorite shows at the Met, which was called Infinite Jest. The exhibition explored caricatures and satires in its many forms, from the Italian Renaissance to the present. Its artists used the extended faces and sunken eyes as a tool to talk about what was happening in the society around them. They expanded and molded the world around them to give a portrayal of its underbelly. Christine Borland is an artist I recently discovered during my last tutorial. She is an artist who loves to play detective. Her work fascinates me because it uses forensics and the human body. In 1997, she had a piece titled "The Dead Teach the Living." It was a computer-reconstructed heads in plaster that sat on pillars outside to show the different stereotypes of race and mental disability. The research question around the work was, what constitutes and who decrees normality? I find this idea harping back to the grotesque and discussing normalities and who sets the boundaries and the limits. The forms I make are neither bad nor good. The humanoid creatures are the same as most people, a gray area living a humble existence. I want to use them to have discussions of what I care about and what I would like to say. I see them now as a tool I can use, a specific language that it is my goal for the viewer to read.